visit, I came and walked around 42 years since I've really been here and visited and, you know, been a part. And that's a long time as well. Dear friends from here, some that I still to this day stay very close with. I got a brother, DC, who's as close as a brother could be, and I have friends who are here that have been friends of mine for years, and I've got some other friends out there that I kind of made and developed here that have turned into, again, as close as you can be. Godfather of my children. You know, all that kind of stuff. People who spoke at my parents' funerals, my dad's funeral. All people that kind of came from this area, and again, that's just powerful stuff. So I'm just sharing that because this is a special thing for me. It's really, really fun. A lot of life has gone by since I've been here last, but there's a little bit of this in every single thing I've ever done, and I want to say that very clearly because it doesn't go away. I said I was going to talk today about teaching leadership studies at a college level and why it's growing so much. And different people are going to have different opinions on that, but it is one of the fastest growing graduate programs right now in the country. And there are a number of colleges that are offering four-year baccalaureate degrees that are having programs and disciplines and degrees and majors and minors in leadership, and I think there's a reason for it. And so rather than worrying about everything that people do when they're in the programs, I think one takeaway is to understand that obviously there is a need, and there are people out there that want instruction and want information to start thinking about things a little differently than maybe tomorrow, maybe they did yesterday. And I've been privileged enough to be able to be involved in that a bit and just to share some of my perspectives with you. I surely don't have all the answers to any of this stuff. I've studied a lot. I've worked a lot of years. I've gone to school for a long time. And I'm still a person full of questions. And I tell my students that every day. Leadership, experiential leadership is not about finding the answers or being taught what the answers are. It's about being taught how to ask questions, which should never really stop. And as long as you do that, growth is going to happen. And again, you're going to change tomorrow a little bit, be a little bit different than it was today, because you learned something, tried something new, and made it happen. So what I've done is I've put together just a few pieces here, and I'm going to move through them a little bit. If anybody has any questions that they would like to ask, or if I say something that sparks something, please do me a favor. Raise your hand. And there's nothing that I'm saying is so important that I can't stop. And I want to address what it is, the question you might have, or what it might be. Just because we can do that, and you can maybe have a little bit more ownership over that. If you want to wait and do it later, you can. But I just want to throw that out. So I'm just going to make a few statements quick about Luther here. When I sold my company almost 15 years ago, I didn't know what I was going to do. It's all I'd done, and it was a good run. And I was surrounded by the most amazing people in the world. And I had an opportunity to get out, and they wanted it all. And I sat down with my wife and said, "Wow, what am I going to do?" And we talked and decided maybe this is an opportunity to do something different that you wouldn't do otherwise. So I did it. And I was miserable. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had been doing that all the time. No one called me 20 times a day to ask for directions. You know, suddenly it's like, what value did I offer? And I was sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? And I was doing the best I could. I wasn't a basket case, but I was goofier than normal. And all of a sudden, I got a phone call from Luther College. And there was a gentleman there who was one of my dearest best friends. years old, Greg Lonnie, and he was the director of wellness at Luther. And he was the wrestling coach at the University of Wisconsin for a number of years. And I taught adjunct at UWL and helped start the graduate program for a number of years. So I spent a lot of time there. And Greg called me up and he said, "Hey, I want you to come here. I heard you sold the company. I want you to come here and talk about what we might be able to do here." I said, "Well, what do you want?" "Well," he says, "I was thinking maybe, we make you faculty member and you could start a leadership program here and do some adventure ed stuff." I said, "I did not want to." Colleges, I work for them, but I don't know if I want to be the same one every day. I want to send a bill. But anyway, he razzed me a little bit, and finally he knew me so well. He knew that my mom was still living in Cresco, and he wasn't getting much leverage with me, and finally said to me, "Well, for God's sake, would you go visit your mother?" And I said, "Okay." I said, "I'll give you a few years." And that was over 14 years ago. So it's been good. And it was that new chapter for me. It was that piece of change that we talk about in leadership as a necessary condition for getting anywhere in regards to a growth pattern. It wasn't done strategically by me, but as I look back now, it's pretty amazing to look at and to see how fortunate I've been to be able to work with the people I do and have the opportunities that I've had. And so I've been at Luther this time, and we've done a nice job with that program. If you ever want more specificity on, get a hold of me and ask anytime. I'm proud to talk about it. It's one of the fastest growing programs in college, and it's drawing an array of students from multiple disciplines, which is the neat thing about leadership studies. It's not isolated to one discipline. That doesn't make any difference if you're selling insurance or teaching music, or you're a doctor, or you're working for your family business. It makes no difference what you're doing. Leadership is applicable to everything. So it's been really fun for me because I get a really neat array of students. One thing I want to say right off the bat, however, is I had a plan for me to do this when we went there, and I had some different models. I had models from graduate school. I talked with a buddy of mine, again, friend from here, godfather of all of my children, Scott Werdinger, Dr. Werdinger from Mankato State University, which is now Minnesota State, who had an unbelievable professional career, and he was the head of the doctoral program in education leadership at Minnesota State. And I asked him for some suggestions. I said, "This is what I'm having to do here, buddy. Give me some ideas," because he'd been doing academia his whole life. For me, this was like a little twilight gig I was doing. He'd been doing it forever. So I talked to him. What a brilliant man. And again, he's right back with some of us here that we all work here together. Richard, all of us, it was fun. It was fun to have him be a part. And he said, the one thing that you need to do, and you need to say it loudly and be proud of it, and that is that your leadership studies program is based on experiential education methodology, and make sure that you scream it from the hills, because that's what it is. I had gone to grad school in 1980 with him, and we were in a master's program there that was an experiential ed master's program. But by the time I was going to go to Luther, I kind of moved in a different direction. So coming up with a curriculum was something that I needed a little assistance with, and that piece of information he gave me was super, because it's how I think. It's where the roots of all of my academia and scholarly work have been. And it turned into a really neat challenge for me to be able to do that. At Luther, we do that. We teach leadership studies using experiential education methodology very much. Experiential education, the term is kind of a strange term. A lot of people don't even know what it means. I can tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean if you have an experience, you therefore learn. It means that experience is very, very important and oftentimes necessary part of the learning experience. It's a philosophy of education. It has methodologies that are attached to it, and it is not happenstance. It is very strategic and very directed. And to use that with leadership is beautiful because they parallel each other so much. Experience gives whatever you're talking about in education or leadership a context. It gives you something measurable to connect to. It teaches you questions to think about, and it's very hard to define. Quick story about this hard to define thing. In fact, I talk to my students about it all the time. I just had the first class of students in a couple different classes yesterday, and went through this, some of this with them at the time. That is, how do you teach leadership when no one even really knows what it means? Everybody has a different understanding. Everybody has a different perception. Everybody's probably right. But how do we do this? I said, I think the best way to do it is for me to be severely vague. But I want you to think, how can we maybe do this? And you know what? The same thing with experiential education. People use the term all the time, but a lot of times they're not really in touch with the fact that it is a very, very well-researched, long-time running methodology of learning. So I would say, I share a story with them sometimes, and I'll say, okay, here's the deal, leadership. Story. Socrates, everybody knows who he is. Socrates, one time, had a student, and they were working together, they were talking, and obviously, hopefully, the student was learning. And Socrates looked at the student and he said, student, he said, what is a chair? The student said, well, chair is something you sit on. And Socrates said, so does that mean if you can sit on it, it's a chair? Well, no. What is a chair? Well, it's got 4 legs, so if it has 4 legs, it's a chair. Can give me rest. It can give you rest. It means the chair is what we went on. And pretty soon, the student, Socrates said, what is a chair? And Socrates said, the notion of chairness. Strange Socraterian response. However, kind of neat. Because what he was really saying is that it's more than something. It's a culmination of many, many perspectives, many understandings, many experiences make it what it is. And that list of things never really goes away. They're there. And all those together somehow get us to this place called chair. That's what leadership is. Many perspectives, many experiences, many understandings, new things that are going to happen tomorrow that haven't happened yet. All of that stuff is one column. It's the notion of leadership. And I would start a class that way. I guess that's what I want you to think. I want you to be thinking about what is part of your definition and how does it work? It's good sometimes to be reminded of the things you don't know, so that you pursue the effort to make it an answer. Some data. I threw this in because I thought it was interesting. This is what I stole from Dr. Wordy. Steal it, he published it in a book. Copied it up. But anyway, I didn't tell him I was going to use it, so I suppose breaking the rules. Anyway, he did some statistical data research in one of his books, and he was talking about education and different ways to teach. Actually, what he's noted for isn't just experiential education. They call it project-based learning, which is a method of teaching, especially K through 12, where projects are an essential part of all learning experiences. We're not just talking and doing. We're doing, we're talking, we're making relevant applications to something that makes sense beyond words. And that's his area. And a lot of his writing, has to do with education. He was right about it, what's wrong with it, what we can do better. But I thought this data was interesting. A survey was done that was measuring long-lasting learning. What can you learn to do? What could I have learned here 56 years ago that I still remember? Long lasting learning. What happens to make that happen? What are those special pieces? And what they did is they did a research study that part one had to do with taking graduates of the school system, K through 12, or probably a number of school systems, K through 12, and doing a questionnaire with them, probably a Likert type questionnaire, survey questionnaire, on year 5, year 10, year 20. And there's a lot of questions and stuff involved, but the one that I want to point to I thought was interesting, and this is how it read. What do you remember most about your K through 12 school experience? At all these levels. This is interesting to me because a 12th grader is not much different than a college student. And this was a huge research study, and the answer overwhelmingly at every one of those time points was this. The thing I remember most is how people in situations made me feel. It wasn't about math equations. It wasn't about proper sentence structure. It wasn't about the stuff that you normally say happens at school. It made a very, very, very clear statement that the most important thing that happens in any learning environment, at home, community, school, wherever it might be, is relationships. It's driven by relationships. And they carry the torch. And they help you learn better in the future. And we need to celebrate them and hold them up and figure out how to identify them and how to use them to the best of our capabilities. Relationships. Everything starts there. Everything ends there. School, businesses, personal life, communities, teams, makes no difference what it is. Relationships, they are experiential. Which takes us back to why I think it's a neat idea to make sure that when you're looking at leadership, dissecting it, you turn it into a doing experiential modality. Experience matters. When I was 9 years old, I came here as a camper. First time I was ever away from home, without like a grandma or a grandpa or an uncle or an aunt or a couple friends or whatever. I remember mom, dad dropped me off. You were comfortable with doing it. I was kind of a eager, energetic little kid, and I went for it. And stayed in one of the cherry cabins. And I think I said that right, the cherry cabin, isn't it? The cherry cabin. And I don't remember anybody in the group really. I don't remember the name of my counselor, but I can tell you something. I remember that I walked into an environment that was, I remember feeling safe. I remember making friends. I remember the counselor, the teacher. Maybe in some ways my first mentor. Somebody outside of me. I remember that person. I remember what he looked like. And the thing I remember most, which is so interesting in regards to this relationship development, is that he gave me a nickname. I never had a nickname before. You know, that was a cool thing. Well, my dad probably had a lot of them for me. but I never had one. And I was special. Made me feel special. He probably had it for everybody, but I'm just talking about the way I feel. And I mean, I'm telling you that now 56 years later. It was powerful, powerful stuff. It was a time where I was holding a person up and feeling good about the way they were treating me. And it's about the first time I probably looked up at somebody outside of my close-knit world when you're that age and thinking, I kind of want to be like that person. We did things, you know, we played games, we swimming, we did all of that kind of stuff. And suddenly I realized as I think back that the strength of all of it is that I was thinking differently because I was experiencing things differently. It was personal. It was a very human experience. It was inspirational for me. It was exciting. It was all these feelings that I hadn't had outside of my whole environment. And at the end, I wanted more. That was the answer for me. This stuff is good. I want more. Throughout my life, through college, I sought experiences like that. I sought experiences that were a little bit adventurous, which is something about it that tripped me. I was super fond of school. It's kind of weird to say that I went for so long. By the time I did my latter years in school, I was studying things that I was really interested in. Elementary school, junior high, it was just, you were doing your thing. But I went after activities. I wanted them to be activity-based. I wanted them to be action-centered. I wanted them to be recreational, and I always wanted them to be providing me with a new experience. I'm just sharing this about me because it helps you understand what my perspective on some of this is. And when I did it with others, it even became more impactful. I knew something significant was happening. I knew change was occurring when I was involved in those kinds of activities, when I saw other people involved in them, but I didn't know. I had no idea. I just knew it was good. People were growing and learning, and I had this unsettled need to figure out why. Whether I was a camp counselor, I saw it then. Some stuff was happening. I wanted an answer, but I didn't know why. I was an outdoor recreation guide, an instructor in numerous disciplines through the years, and I saw it happen. I saw it happen when I would have people on a river, or I would have people on a climbing site, or I would have people hiking, and there was something happening again that was magical. I didn't really know why. I had a grasp on what experiential was about, but I hadn't really dove in academically, and I just knew I was drawn to it, and I had to keep doing it. And then I went into healthcare. I'm a recreational therapist. I had a recreational therapy practice in Milwaukee, and I started using adventure type stuff as a modality in psychiatry. And some windows started to open for me. That's just one area. But suddenly I could see measurable learning. It was not just affecting somebody having fun, but we could address in a care plan, that we could address in regards to learning goals. And I was at Rogers Memorial Hospital in Commonwealth, Wisconsin, when all that started to happen for me. And it changed me in a huge way because I got excited. Suddenly it was moving down the road, made a little bit of sense. And now leadership made a little bit more sense. This whole experiential thing made a little bit more sense. And I had patients who were benefiting from it. And so I built a ropes course. Because I didn't have the ability to go on rock sites whenever I wanted. I didn't have the ability to go to a river or a lake or a bank. So I could build this right in my own backyard. And I had a hospital administrator that said, if you want it, you got it. He believed in me. And we did it. And it was a big deal. And we got press national. And it was the beginning of a career for me that was just so beautiful. I can't describe it. And it happened there at that time. This guy believed in me and said, let's do it. Now we have patients every day in the course, and we were doing care plans every day, and they're making all these things happen. And then other hospitals found out that it was going on from all over, and everybody, it seemed like everybody was calling me. I had all these phone calls. We want you to come and help us do this here. We want you to come and help us do this here. And my world kind of got chaotic, but I liked it. There was just something about this energy that I liked. I couldn't do it all. I tried for a little while, but I couldn't do it all. And so, tough decision in my life. I sat down and talked with my wife, and I said I was going to leave my practice. I thought I could give it a go. And we did. And I started a company called Abby, and we were healthcare only in the beginning. And I had a lot of hospitals that we were contracting with, and I helped people do what we were doing. Then the world of education got involved, and all that stuff got involved. And there's good things happening, and the business was growing. And I still wasn't really sure what it was all about. And I knew I was starting to get answers. I remember calling my dad, saying, hey, Dad, I'm doing this and this and this. He says, yeah, you're doing good, you're doing good. I said, I'm not making much money, but I think I can make this go. And I said, maybe I should do this or this or this. It's a little easier, it's easier to predict. And what should I do? And my dad said, you need to do what you love. I said, that's the answer I wanted. You need to do what I love. He says, are you doing what you love? I said, yeah. He said, keep doing the same thing. And as I thought about it later, obviously I did. As I thought about it later, I thought, you know what? He didn't say do what makes the most sense. He didn't say do what the numbers tell you. He didn't say, oh, let's do a data equation to see what's going to happen. He was talking from here to here. You were at the center core again, that relationship place. And I did it. And I thank the Lord every day I did. That place, trying to figure out what you're doing, having some interests, get it going a little bit, but not really understanding totally, it's kind of where my students are at school. I don't care what they're majoring in. They think they know, they don't really, a lot of them, some of them do kind of know, but they're struggling and they're trying to figure out how can I take this area of passion and do something with it in the world. It's going to be magnificent. How can I do that? I want to learn how to do that. Now we're talking about leadership. Now we're talking, how do I become a leader within a given milieu? How do I do it? Steve Jobs would say, don't settle. Whether you like him or not, he has good sayings. Don't settle. And another statement that he made many times, which I liked, was, and don't waste your time living someone else's. Be true to yourself. Keep your nose down. Keep moving ahead. Once my business started, I suddenly had another reality. Because on one hand, you have the stuff that you love going on. And on another hand, you're having a hard time really putting a handle on it if you had to write a big paper on it. And when before, you were just loving it, now no one cares really if you love it. They just want to know how the heck you're going to sustain it. And the real world kicks in. Now it's about product, it's about service, it's about what comes, it's about money, it's about people, it's about the real world. It's an eye opener, and I remember it well, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Because again, I think it takes you down the road to what leaders need to do and what you need to share with people. Try to get in front of something and make it happen. The real world is real, and bills need to be paid. And that was my life then for quite a number of years. I was in a company with a lot of people who agree. And suddenly I found myself in academia. Wow, was that a change? I don't pay the bills anymore. Just wait to get a check. It's a different world. I can't make a change that I know needs to happen because there's many committees that make all the decisions. I mean, it's bureaucracy at its finest, and it was a huge shift for me. And so I thought what I want to do is I want to embed myself in clear theory that addresses leadership. And at Luther, this is what we've done. And it's helped me a lot to take the same energy I had about loving to put into explaining, to create a model or a template, to give people boxes to check in the right column that says, okay, if these things are in order, we're at least on track. And so that was my new challenge with leadership. It can be defined in a way. There are things that are necessary conditions for it to occur. And how do you pass that message on? At Luther, we have, like I said before, taken on a very experiential viewpoint of it, and we follow the teachings primarily of two scholars. One would be John Dewey. John Dewey is an educational philosopher. He was publishing in the 1930s. And he's considered many one of the founders of experiential education, the concept. He never uses that term, but the concept of it. Studied him for years, I dissertated on him, and to me, he stands for things in regards to thinking that are amazing, and trying to take that brilliant stuff he's talking about and try to make it human in a way that a freshman can understand it is interesting, but it's been a fun challenge for me, and I think we do a decent job with it. I would like to think we do. And anyway, what he did is he defined what experiential education is, the new term, using the new term. And he said you have to do learning. It's something you do. You say that as well. I say leadership is a verb. You do leadership. You don't learn it sitting in a room and philosophizing over it, coming up with maybe plans for things that don't have any human consequence on anybody whatsoever. Doesn't mean you do it. Dewey was in that place, but the other place that he was, which is really cool, is that he believed that education needed to affect the whole person. So if I'm going to educate you, Mark, I need to know that, okay, we have a human being here who I want to affect, and to do it, I can't do it by just giving you theory. I also have to get you involved in regards to instinct and how you feel, and that whole side of you, that whole perspective of you, it's difficult to explain. That place in a student that I've been struggling with for years, the stuff that you know is there and it's real, and I can just tell, but I can't explain it. The gut instinct. Dewey hit it on the head. He said if we educate the whole person, our education needs to be targeted in both. Because only with the combination of both theory and practice can this stuff be relative to a person who's living in this world, trying to contribute. He would say what people know matters, but also what people think, what they do, and how they feel matter. I made a little list here, and I'm going to throw it out because I have to give a little bit of credence to Dewey. He believed in educational reform, but he believed it should be educational reform, not a revolution, an evolution. Slow and steady, kind, factual, effective. He believed that you needed to change the way people think continually, because the world is continually changing. New thought, he said, is required in education and educational environment. And he couldn't be more right. I see it today every day. I mean, I'm in the classroom with digital natives every day. They grew up with computers and phones in their hand. They are about as digitally native as you can get. And I couldn't be dumb when it comes to that stuff. And you know what's funny? I don't even want to learn. I'll just ask other things. But Dewey was hitting it in a whole new venue, but he was saying the same thing. It's about change. Prensky, he's an author that's out right now that talks about how technology has changed the world, and he especially talks about how it's changed teaching. And what he says, which I just love this idea, he said, teachers, because of technology and the fact that everybody has all this access to all this information any given second of the day, teachers no longer are responsible for providing information. That's no longer their job. The job of teaching now has changed. Now the teachers are the guides, the meaning makers, people who give context to information that the students already possess. Dewey said that in the early 30s, basically, theoretically he did. He also believed There are no sacred cows if in fact you're going to do change. Clear the table and let's do this. For anybody that's managed a system before that stuff, you've got all kinds of reasons and excuses why you can't touch this, and that. We're going to move around with everything a lot more work. He was very, very clear when he says, when you do change, you reevaluate and look at everything. I wrote this down. Sorry, we'll read these few words. He believed that education needed to be based on intellectual aptitude, based on freedom for students to have fun and learn in new ways, based on experience, goals, and reflection, based on planning methods, based on competency of those in charge, based on a prescribed subject matter with learning objectives, understanding that experience-based component of learning must be both student and community centered. Dewey was telling us that experience is great, but you need a guide. You need somebody who plans the experience so that you have learning objectives. You need to have an experience that ahead of time is moving us towards a certain place. We might not get there, but by golly, we're going to make an effort to do it. And we're going to know that we accomplished or didn't accomplish those learning objectives. And if we did, great, we might do it again. If we didn't, we're going to start over and we're going to make a change and we're going to keep going. He was viscerally connecting experience and learning. And I think he, again, was just hitting it on the head so well. He believed, and he used this word, that leaders and educators are guides. He used the word. If you substitute the word leadership for the word education, and what Dewey wrote, it's like the perfect description of leadership. And I think the reason is because this. It's very simple. A good teacher is a good leader. And a good leader is a good teacher. Especially within a focused, targeted area, or whatever it might be we're talking about. And suddenly it gets a little simpler to figure out what's going on with all this stuff and how we might want to address it. That's how we address it to our students, or that's how I address it to my students. The second, this will be quick, then we'll take a break. The second scholar that we use in Luther is a guy by the name of Kurt Hahn. Kurt Hahn was a German educator. He was an educational philosopher, amazing man. His learning theory center was this: education, number one, more than anything else, is about developing character within the students. Character development. He believed that people need to do things as well. He was into the doings kind of talk. You do education, you don't just read. You practice theory and you work together. He was very clear about saying, I don't believe in memorization, regurgitation. And in those days, that was a big thing for a German person to say in an environment that was quite strict. He believed in engaging through action. And he was noted for being the founder of Outward Bound School USA. And he was also the founder of the United World Colleges, all of which still exist and are knocking it out of the park. I have students at Luther from United World Colleges. He was a change agent for sure. And again, if we look at what he's talking about, we make assimilation between leadership and education. I think he provides a really neat model. Again, he believed that the teachers are leaders, or leaders are teachers. And we'll take a break.
We just take 5 to 10 minutes to use the restrooms, grab some more food, something to drink. The restrooms are going to be just out these doors, and take your first right, and you'll find your bathrooms just over there. So stand up, get the wiggles out a little bit. Thanks, Jeff. Looking forward to the second half.
This is fun.
A long time. with Mark and Jill Davidson. And that capital campaign, just to give you a little update, it's now at the $1.1 million mark, headed for $2 million when we start to get our congregations involved here. So that's the next step. But one thing along the way is that because we are to a point where we have some money in, and we need to start working on things that we can work on at this point because we don't have specific plans drawn for the rebuilding or the regenerating of Cedar Lodge. Part of the program was to put up a solar array. And so the board has given us permission to go ahead and do that. So we have a contractor who we have contacted. He will be our solar installer. He will probably be the electrician when we start pulling the wiring and everything from Cedar, but that's not decided yet. But anyway, he's been very cooperative in helping us get that with our company, making a plan. So the array will be back behind Hickory on the hillside. We already have the trees cleared. The power company's been very cooperative and helpful because there's a high line that goes through there. Paul has been working on getting the trees cut up. We have had a gentleman in who has cleared the land, not only of the trees, but sort of level it out so that we're ready to have the solar people come in. So we're plugging, just to get a few more bucks into our capital campaign, we're putting on a little drive that individuals can purchase or adopt a solar panel for approximately $600, which is about the total cost of putting in the panel as well as the superstructure and the connections and everything that would go along with it. So if you want to be involved and you would like to invest $600 for a panel or $1,200 for a couple panels or more, you're welcome to do that. And you can do that simply by going to the Ewalu website and just about, I think if you go up here, help me.
Go to the website.
The website and then click donate first.
Yep, there's a button there. Oh, if you go to the giving site.
Well, there are a number of ways you can get there. If you're on
Right.
social media, you can go in there.
There's a drop down on the giving site. It's super easy to find. It'll say solar panels. So you'll know you're doing the right thing. Or you can just write solar panel on a pledge card.
If you have a pledge card, just make your contribution if you wish to do that. Or just make a pledge, that would be okay too, and then pay for it after the year that it's up or whatever. But it's a good time for picking up a tax deduction. When I donate $600 for our key.
We're doing 17 solar panels, so as a PC contribution.
Yeah.
I always get to do my pledge.
Now, is Jeff Boeke back up here to finish out his presentation, but thank you for that update, Terry. And here's Jeff.
Thank you. Okay. I have a few more things I'm going to go over here. But I have to share, I think this is kind of interesting. How powerful experiences are and how you can never forget them, you know, and how they make this little imprint in it. To me, this is just kind of amazing. And what your memories are over time in relationship to that, to me, is equally as amazing. I was just sitting here or standing here when we had our little break, and I was talking to Chuck, him. He's talking about how years ago as a kid, him and 3 or 4 buddies would come through here and go squirrel hunting. And be off and talk, and it's just a beautiful memory. And then at one point he said, I don't know if we ever shot at a squirrel, but it was a really fun thing to do. It reminded me of the story of my brother, Sam. There's a lot of stories about Sam that I won't share. He's one of the brothers that somebody says, hey, do you know Sam Boeke? You're not whether sure you say yes or no. But you know, I'm teasing. I love him to death, but this is a great story. He was up in Ely, Minnesota. He was staying in our family's cabin up there. This was years ago. And he calls me one day, and Chuck's story reminded me of this. He calls me up, it's the end of the day, and he goes, oh, he said, Jeff, he said, we had so much fun today. I said, what did you do? He said, well, me and whatever, my two buddies, he said, we went out and he said, put up an ice house. And he said, we got out the ice, beautiful ice. And he said, we brought out a generator, we brought a little television set, and he said, we brought a grill, and a cooler with food and all this stuff. He said, we watched a football game. He said, we were out in that ice house all afternoon. I said, really? I said, did you catch any fish? He says, heck, we never even drilled a hole. Anyway, it reminded me of that the joy is what you do, doing it together and doing it with people. And it's so much more powerful than the, you know, catching a fish or whatever, right? So that was great. Okay, a couple things I want to share with you to kind of pull some of it together just a little bit and give you a little bit of reference again to Luther at the end. With keeping this really light and without getting heavy into it, I think one thing really stands out for me in regards to the stuff that I referenced with Dewey's teaching philosophy and Hans and the whole action related, you know, get busy type learning, and especially Dewey's effort to educate what he would call the whole person, needs to be looked at just a little bit deeper. I just want to make a couple comments because I just think it's really interesting. What Dewey is teaching, what we are teaching when we say we're trying to affect the whole person, it makes a lot of sense, and it's very, very in line with brain science. It makes sense. We don't think about this a lot, but it's how we were made. So at the most basic level, brain science tells us we have two hemispheres. Okay. There's two. The frontal lobe of the neocortex and the limbic system, or the limbic region. They work together to make us human beings. You can't go without one. They are together. But they are very, very different. From an educational perspective, that throws kind of an interesting little nut in the fire. The frontal lobe is responsible for language. It's responsible for organization and planning. It's organization for numbers. It's where numbers live and the problem solving. It's about judgment. It's about proactive behavior because I've already done the data. That's that lobe, and we need it. It's how we write things. It's how we talk. It's how we plan. But now we've got the limbic region of the brain. What lives there? Behavioral instinct. Emotions, happy, sad, mad, glad. Feelings. And it is a place that does not have capacity for language. So at whatever part of our life we have, when we all of a sudden we realize, wait a minute, I can't explain it, but I know it's real. It is. It is. It's just that it's coming from a place that has no language. You can write about it. You can do your best as an educator to try to help people access it. But above all, in leadership, education, and education in general, the real goal, if we're going to, if we're going to affect the whole person, is to create a space where both of those very real aspects of what makes a human being are being targeted. Suddenly, confusion that you have when you're younger is confusing. It's like, well, that's how I'm supposed to be. That's how I'm wired. I never thought about why. I'm sure we never did any research on it. But I know it when I see it. That gut instinct is real. I just know, I don't know why I know, but I know it. It's part of the learning process. Both Dewey and Hahn teach us that education, experiential centered education and leadership modeling provide great benefits for the whole person. And I think it's good for us to remember that as we are designing teaching milieus or classes of any type, we remember that we need to target that whole person. To do it isn't always easy. There's something that school talk about a lot, and I wish I had the answer. I don't, but I can recognize a lot of it when I see it. Sometimes it's stuff you can't explain, and sometimes it's stuff that you can. But it has to do with the whole notion of culture, and we hear about leadership culture a lot, but I think we need to, because the word culture is what it's really saying is that it's more than what I think. It's more than what any one of you think. It's the reality that exists in a given space that is inhabited by people who have belief systems that affect others. And over generations, they become stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's why in a room like this, or in a classroom of mine anywhere, you can be sitting in a room where everyone in there is very, very diverse. And everyone in there might have, although they might have a few things that they believe or experience that are similar, they're also very different, because you are the product of the environment you grew up in. You remember my grandpa Mark, neat guy, and a devout Christian man, and he would hear people when they get into like little debates about different possible varying perceptions on Christianity or the church or whatever, and he would just shake his head and he'd go, "I just believe what I was taught." What a beautiful line. It's like, you don't need to make this complicated, unless you're talking really bad, maybe, but he simplified it. The power of cultures creates diversity. It creates variety of people, creates variety of opinion. It means that my rights might not be the same as DC, your right. I mean, my wrong might not be the same as Richard's wrong. And it's all real. And it's all real because it's what we were taught. And you become what you're taught. And what you're taught creates a greater language for a given space called culture, and you get stronger and stronger. So within a small group, it could be as small as a family, it could be as small as two friends, or it could be as large as a huge corporation. The tenets of leadership need to exist in the culture, and they exist through behaviors that are shown both emotionally and that are shown practically. Organization, the whole person. And the biggest challenge we have as leaders is the fact that any space we're in includes people with variety. So what are you doing? We're working hard all the time in this world of diversity to try to create a message or messages that, number one, makes sense for the organizational part of the human being, and on the other hand, give a voice to that which is voiceless, the emotional part of who we are. That's the challenge. The whole person can do it in such a way the culture sustains itself, and cultural actions become habits, and the habits are good, and they change, and hopefully to the better. And that's really the challenge for young leaders, middle-aged leaders, old leaders. How do we make this systemic? We model it. We teach it. Boy, we model, which is where mentorship falls in oftentimes. Who are your mentors and why? The answers go all over the board. It's so varied. When you try to get into it, all you know is that this person meant a lot to me. I can remember, again, these are memories that come back so many years later. So no, how many years was it all? 42 years ago. I can remember sitting at this camp in a building over here, and our guest speaker was Herb Rowe. I remember it well, and I still talk about him in my classes with my students today. It's not because he came in with some huge philosophical revolution. It's because he was just talking real stuff. He was a person talking to people. I remember one thing I remember, he came in one day and he was talking to us and stuff. He was kind of a car, wasn't he? But he came in and he said, question for all, who is the best teacher you've ever had? Who was the best teacher? So everybody in the room, of course, we're all college students. So our mind dives into this, well, in junior high was this, or in high school was this, or in college it's this, and we weren't thinking outside of the box too well. And so people started giving answers, and I can't remember obviously the name of the person, but to him he says, I'm just gonna make up a name, you know. It was Sarah, the woman who lived next door, elderly woman. She taught me about life, and this is what she taught me. He turned the paradigm around in such a beautiful way. The words were spoken, and I'm telling you now, all this time later, and they're words that I still share. Mentorship is part of the culture, and in a really cool way, he's an example of a guy that would walk into a room and kind of have fun, and you'd laugh and go, have a snack, and you're thinking. And when he left, he affected members of that culture in a big way. Not fancy, but he affected it. By throwing out, I just threw that out as an example. It's popped in my head. I was talking about mentorship because, again, those memories are strong. There's reasons for it. It doesn't accidentally happen. It happens because there's some intentionality and there's a little bit of time and thought that goes into it. Okay. From a leadership perspective, Luther, when we're looking at it, I want to throw some of this stuff out to you because there's no, I can't throw out like a teaching syllabus to you or anything, but I want to throw out a few things that are examples of things that we might throw out to help people get an understanding or to help people create kind of a template, something that they can use to understand how maybe I can assess a given situation. You know, how can I do a leadership assessment on something that happened, whether the result was good or whether it was bad, in such a way that I can say, this didn't work. Maybe that's part of the reason, but this didn't work. That's part of the reason. Part of the problem in doing that is that you have to come up with behaviors that are necessary conditions for all leadership. And there's a number of them you throw out there, but there's an awful lot that aren't. In fact, a lot of times people confuse personal traits that work in a given situation as a necessary condition for leadership. Winning is a good example. Winning has nothing to do with leadership. I shouldn't say it has nothing to do with it. Good leaders can win, but I mean, it doesn't, I won, therefore, or we won, therefore, we as a team have a good leader. We can think of all kinds of examples politically and and across the globe. I mean, we can go back to the world wars. We can do anything we want, or we can talk about a small situation in business. The point is that winning is not a necessary condition for leadership. It has to do, again, with strategic purpose that meets some given criteria. We believe in my program, and it's something that Luther pushes a lot, that leadership is a teaching modality that can be taught. You can teach people to have a list of things to think about if they're going to try to make a good decision. The behavioral part of people is a little different. The emotional part of people, you know, some people it comes way easier than others. Some people are so comfortable in a crowd as names, and there's other people that are the nicest folks on earth, and they're just kind of scared to talk very much. That's okay. But leadership can still be taught because some of the greatest leaders I've ever known are quiet leaders. The quiet people don't need to talk a lot. Sometimes I think, who are you trying to convince them to hear yourself when they do talk too much? It can be taught. And in teaching it, we ask people to do a little bit of self-evaluation in respect to what kind of person you are. It's really tough to teach a mean person to be nice. You can model it. You can model it. And you know, the interesting thing is also, it's really tough to teach a really nice person to be mean. Some of these are just God-given things that put you at a different level when you're starting the race, but I think things can evolve. And I think good leadership development tells us that it can. And it's with what we say, and it's with how we think, and it's about what we do. Necessary conditions that I would throw out as some examples, just to give you some examples as we're talking about ways to look at leadership and ways that I would do it from an academic perspective. And I think there are ways that help students put some kind of a plan together that can work and that's usable, which I hope is what makes leadership education effective. You have to walk away with something. You can't just be all, well, I kind of felt this way, or I thought this way, so that's the case. You have to have something that you're using. So I just throw this out as an example. Of course, you can get a lot more detail, but it's an example, and I just threw this together for you, and I just picked a few things that I thought would be good examples of tenets that I would say are good things to be on a list if you were going to create a list, or a person who's going to create a list. To measure the effectiveness of leadership, or maybe the breakdown of it. Number one, popped up for me. Influence. If you are a good leader, if you are a leader, you are influencing. If you're not influencing, you're not. That's an easy one. Influence. I'm not saying what it is or how, I'm just saying influence. Good leaders influence. And they influence because they're guides. And as we mentioned before, good leadership has a strategy, which means there needs to be somebody in charge, which means there has to be some type of a plan. There need to be learning objectives, there need to be expectations, and you need to be called on things that don't work as much as being rewarded for things to do. There is a structure, a guide, and people of influence are trying to make that happen the best they can. Influence. Another great example, an easy one, which some of these are words that you just hear all the time. I'm just trying to give you a different way of looking at them as we're putting in a leadership context. Communication, everybody talks about it. In fact, it's over communicated. Everybody uses the word all the time. Oh, you gotta have to communicate. You gotta have to, and that's another thing. That's maybe just communication-ness. Like I said earlier, would be the way to describe it, but it is something that's important. You have to communicate. You have to, and leaders have to be able to do it. And it has to be intentional, and it has to be effective. It has to be agenda driven on one point, and on another point, it has to be compassionate towards the needs of people. One thing I would say that always needs to be considered with your communication, however, is this, because it's the transfer of a message from one to the next. I would tell students, please always remember, communication has nothing to do with the intention of the person who is communicating. It is defined by the way it is received. The reality of communication becomes true with the way it is perceived. You could have the best intentions in the world. You can think everybody in the room likes you. And when you leave, everybody goes, that person is a duh. You communicated that you were a duh. And that is real, because it's real in the perception of others. We need to remember when we communicate. Think long and hard about what you're saying. But remember, you need to be more concerned about what people are hearing. And put systems together and other communication efforts together to find out what that is. Because sometimes if you don't, just run around in a bubble thinking that you're always asking the right question and nobody understands. Yeah, they understand, you just are looking at people a lot differently than you are. Another one I threw out there is change. We talked about it before, so I'm not going to dwell on it, but it's a great word. It is, it's real. And for good leadership to be happening, change has to be occurring because the world changes, which means people change, which means the needs of people change. You can't do the same thing today that you did even a few years ago, let alone years and years ago. Change. It's taking it from one place to another, and it should be doing so in a way that's improving it. I'll give you an example. I'm the new women's basketball coach. I walk into the team the first day. I walk in and I say, "Oh, I'm really excited about this, athletes. I'm really excited about it. You know, last year this team 6-5, and you played this position, and you played this position, and you played this position, and you had this many mistakes, and you had this many assists, and da da da. And you know what my goal is? My goal this year is to be 6-5, and I want every single one of you people to play the exact same positions, and doggone, you better have the same number of assists and have the exact same record as last year." People would think you're nuts. Change for improvement. It might end up the same, but the goal at the beginning is to make it better. And to change as changes are needed. Leaders create change continually. Ethics and morals, another example that has to be in the equation. There is right and there is wrong. It might vary on some aspects of what we think that is, but aside from that, there are rights and there are wrongs. We have to be clear within our culture, or the culture that the leader is establishing, how that looks. How does that look? I mean, ethical considerations can get really complicated if any of you are taking courses in ethics or read about them. I mean, by the time you go to the course, like, I don't know what I believe about anything because they're coming in every one. Don't make it that complicated. There's right and there's wrong. There's ways to treat people and there's ways that are not. We will have some rules that we expect. And if such and such is happening, if cruelty is happening, or if we are, you know, or if we are jeopardizing the dignity of a person within our group, we've stepped over the line. There's some things and ways to handle it. Do I have the answer? No, I'm just saying it's part of the equation. You have to look at it. And the things that people get the maddest about, get the most frustrated about, are oftentimes the violations of ethics and morality. If it's right here, because that's what we were taught. Collaboration, another overused word. My golly, you need it. You need it. Good decisions are not made in isolation. Period. Good decisions are come to through the collective input of a huge group of people that are very, very different. That's how it works. That's why you can teach me something and I can teach you something. You can teach this person something. That's how it works. Collaboration has to be in place if leadership is occurring. I threw one more in there, compassion. You gotta love it. You gotta like what you're doing. You gotta. If you're gonna be a good leader, you gotta believe in it. You gotta like it. You gotta love it. Passion is so big, and it's all coming from that limbic center. Because it's just, I wake up and I can't stop thinking about it. You gotta have it if you're really gonna drive forward. And if I can get into a situation where something happened and I'm the leader, and at the end of the entire situation, I can sit down and do some type of evaluation assessment on what happened, good or bad, and I can say, again, I'm just using this as an example. These aren't the magic words, I'm just using them as examples of words. But I can say, was influence in place, and so what worked and what didn't? How did communication work for and against us potentially? Did we make any changes? What were the changes? Is this different than something that they heard before? Did that cause something else to happen? Ethics and morals, did we cross any boundaries? Improvement, making things better, collaboration, where we respect and diversity within our group. If you have some type of a template, suddenly you can look at something that is as difficult to define as leadership as something that you can talk about, you think about. It's not perfect, but it lets us do it. And I think that's the real goal. I know that's the goal I give the students. So you got a plan. So that next time that you're making a decision about it, or something that might be really little, or it might be something that's a pretty significant thing going on in your life, you have some good questions to ask yourself that a leader would do, and maybe it's just the leader of you. So I would just throw that out as a, you know, as a template. Discussion themes that I'm just throwing it out really quick here at the end, but discussion theme that we might talk about in classrooms, or that I think are worthy of talking about, and we could have some really good discussions about them, would be things like, it's kind of like heroes, or kind of like mentors, but heroship is an interesting thing. Who are your heroes and why? And you can start talking about why and what they represent, and what it means to you, and where that goes, and where did that come from. But heroes are a big deal. They're a little bit different than mentors, maybe. Maybe in your mind they're the same thing, but who are they? Very, very interesting to think about, because leaders need to know that your ideal goal is to have a room full of heroes. So how do you make the nest comfortable for everyone so that they can, they can function in their highest form, and they can be the best that they can. Remember your friends. This is another talking point that we have a lot of times. Your friends and your colleagues define you, because they define the culture. The culture is teaching you. It comes full circle. People you are with define you. With students, I tell them a lot of times, you got to clean your closet. If you're going to get this stuff right, clean it. I don't know what's in there. It's none of my business, but you do. You clean it. Get things in order. Daniel Pink, real famous author on leadership. In fact, he's got great books that are out there. He would say, in regards to cleaning your closets, the real goal of young leaders right now, actually leaders of any age, a lot of times speaks to younger populations, is to design who you are, figure out who you want to be, design it, and go for it. And it has to do with who you hang out with. If you want to be a millionaire, hang out with rich people. If you want to be compassionate, hang out with somebody who's compassionate. You want to be a carpenter, hang out with one. You want to hang out with somebody who's lying. If you want to be a liar, hang out with liars. I mean, it goes on and on. It makes a difference. You are, in many ways, affected by those around you. It doesn't mean to not hang out with people that you might think that they aren't doing the greatest at a given thing, but be aware. People around you define you. For a college population, those are important words. It helps them think about who they are, how they're being perceived, and what they might do with that. And at that time in your life, you really think about that a lot, because you're not sure where you're going, maybe what you want to be. You do know that you're in a consistent state of becoming, and you just want to try to become along the path that you exercise a little bit of effort to put yourself, in the right place, the right path. Small town bartering. I have conversations with the students about this all the time. Just remember, small town bartering works. The way it was when I was a kid. People downtown in the stores, they traded service. Good leadership teams do it. It's not always the strict rules where the only form of currency is this. Currency can be ethic. Currency can be emotions. What am I giving and what am I getting in regards to all sorts of things? Think long and hard about this, especially folks if they've had experience in small towns or small community settings. Think about what worked and think about that bartering model, because you know what? It has a lot to teach us in everything that we do. Am I giving them more than they deserve? Am I not giving them enough? What is currency in regards to relational interaction with a given set of people that you're leading? What are you seeing, and how do you intervene if necessary? And the last thing I'm going to say here to end up is the one word I throw at the students, I throw it out all the time, and anybody who's had me will tell you. What we're really, really doing in everything that we talk about in applied leadership studies, what we're really doing is we're doing what's called metacognition. And the definition of metacognition is thinking about how you think. That's what it's about. It's not, here's the answer. It's thinking about how you think, why you think it, what makes you think that. How can it change? What can you do different tomorrow? How might it be different next week? Why is it like this, whatever it might be. Metacognition is thinking about how you think, because there's a reason. And you have the ability to move it in a positive way. And everyone in your room is your leader. They have different realities and different reasons. So how in the world do you harness that? There lies the challenge, but I think it's worth the effort. Thanks very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're receiving reminding you chair. You write all these materials and stuff, go over them. How do we know what that person is perceiving? How do we get inside that?
Ask them.
You ready? That's what you hear in your series, but like some, yeah, I think otherwise you're just
Are we being a little, maybe a little questionnaire, are we doing this right, or are we being a little too, we're making assumptions, should we be being too aggressive, should we be less, I would ask them and find out, are we communicating this in a way that's inviting? In a way that makes you feel good about contributing, or is this kind of turning into another thing that I don't want to look at that piece of mail, you know what I mean, because we all think those every day, but as simple as that answer might be, I think
Is that what leaders do then? Sometimes is that you ask your class to evaluate how they're perceiving you or?
Absolutely, absolutely, and the class and many assignments. What works here, what connected, and what didn't connect. Connecting meaning that something was learned, and it was learned because there was a new thought or a new something that was presented, which made them think different about something that they had before. And they might not change their mind, but if they move to this new place, learning occur. And in regards to student assessments, if they're not getting any small tidbits that are helping them to think about things in different or new or more creative, personalized ways, then we need to talk about it, talk about why. And I do probably need to think about how I was presenting it as well. But yeah, I think you continually check in with your people from a leadership perspective all the time. Don't assume that it's right just because no one said anything. A lot of times people don't say anything, they just get what to say. But yeah, I would say checking in would be a good, would be a good thing to do. Just kind of have that written into, my to-do list.
It's yours.
That's not fun. I know it's hard. Anybody else? Okay, thanks. Oh, go ahead.
In the stuff that you work with young people about, they're not at that stage, but they will eventually get to that point of, you teach leadership and how to let go. Because we see it frequently, people get into a leadership position, they can't get out. You talk with them about letting go. So
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Richard. I would say one of the main overarching goals of the leader is to create an environment where the people that they are leading can emancipate. Emancipation is the goal. It needs to be the goal. You're not trying to affect people in a way that they will be dependent on you. You want them to move to that next place. It's like fishing. Take them on another time. Kid wants to, I want the fish to be a little bigger. That's great. You go again. I want it to be a little bit bigger this next time. I want it to be bigger than yours. You do it again. You go up the next time. I want a trophy this time. Oh, that's dang. You take them through, the whole process. And at the end of that dance, you know what the last step is. That person keeping somebody else's fish. That's the goal. The goal is for you to go through the process and go through all those little learning traits, whatever it might be, so that in turn they are emancipated. And they can start the cycle again. So yeah, I think you have to talk about it because emancipation is a hard thing. Any parent knows it. You went through it with your kids. Some days you think everything's right, and other days you think there's not one thing they're doing that's right now. I can't say. But it is. I mean, it is part of our. It's a great question. Does that make sense?
You see that a lot about what we do here at camp, you know, how many kids come as campers and then become a counselor and are teaching the same thing that their counselor taught them, and the LT program, counseling and training, and then we see so many camp people go on to service type positions of the clergy, things like that. It's ongoing through that experience.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. What a nice little informal, comfortable environment. So take care.
I think you'll give minutes if anyone's got any other questions you want to ask. Thank you to our viewers online. It was great to kind of see you, and hopefully you were able to hear well enough, and we'll get a recording of this put up on our website as well, in case anyone wanted to share it with somebody else. So thanks again, Jeff, and it's great to see so many alumni. I think we'd love to get a picture of the alumni who are here, who know each other. That would be great. So anyways, we'll say goodbye to you folks online, and thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.